welcome back to my channel. Today we're here for a little look back at my February TBR. I started February with 30 books on my TBR plans, and at the end of February I'd read 18 books. Sadly, however, those 18 books were not all books that were on my February TBR. So as I've been doing for a few months now, we're going to do a little revisit of my TBR video and see how many of the books that I had planned to read that I actually read. I'd like to give myself and you guys a little chance to see how plans actually stack up with reality. So stay tuned for my February TBR revisit. I'm trying, but I can't lift them. There are over 30 books on my TBR for February.
Over 30.
I don't even have all 30 books here because at least 10 of them are electronic versions, and some of them are books that I've already requested from the library, but they haven't come in yet. But I'm going to tell you about the 30 books that I'm planning to read in February, a month that has 28 days, 4 of which have already passed. But my TBR videos are nothing if they're not ambitious. And that's the truth. Ambitious plans that quite often don't get realized, but I'm nothing if not a huge goal setter. And so while I could be tempted to read only books by authors of African descent, I can't do that this year, maybe next year. So here are the 30 books that are on my reading plan. I did read quite a few books by authors of African descent in February. Some of them were not books that I had or even knew about at the time when I filmed my TBR video. So you'll hear a little bit more about that when I do my February recap. So let's go back to this. First category of books that I'm going to tell you about are some books that I mentioned last month. I told you that I'm doing a NetGalley purge where I have books that I've agreed to read and review on behalf of publishers. There are 10 NetGalley arcs that I plan to get to in February. I didn't read a single one of those. So the first 10 books on my TBR, I didn't even touch. So let's just skip over that. Parallel Lights by Jill D. Block, So Much Life Left Over by Louis de Bernier, Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, The Day the Sun Died by Yan Lianqi, Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield, Kissing Max Holden by Katie Upperman, Better with Age by Phyllis Strump, Man in a Hurry by Paul Moran, While We Work by Barry Schwartz, and Together Apart by Natalie K. Martin. I started February with 10 arcs that I wanted to read from NetGalley, and I didn't touch a single one of them. So they're back on my March TBR because March is the month where I have to read them. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to delete my NetGalley account. I also have another title that NetGalley approved me for, even though I've since received the print edition from the publishers, and that is Golden Child by Claire Adam. So I had the arc of Golden Child by Claire Adam. I since got 2 printed copies of this book, and I read this. I did a full review here on the channel. This is a 5-star read for me. So if you're interested in hearing my full thoughts on this one, click the link down below for my review. And yeah, so that was a NetGalley arc that I actually read, but I also had other versions. February, I'm also doing some buddy reads and participating in some reading groups. I started a buddy reading group with Sean the Book Maniac, Doris from Aldi Books, and a couple other readers that I can't remember all their names. There's Justin and I think Sarah, and I don't know their channel names. And we've been reading a few books. I'm a part of 2 groups. One is a kind of private group between me and Sean. I hope I'm not telling you guys a secret by telling you. He said it's not secret. But Sean and I are reading a buddy read of Almost Home by Ruma Chopra. I read this one. It wasn't quite what we expected it was going to be, but I learned a lot of things about the history of the Maroons in my country, in Jamaica, and also when these Maroons were deported. I don't know if deported was the right word, but they were moved from Jamaica, and eventually they found themselves in Canada and then Sierra Leone, and then some of them returned to Jamaica. And the book was very informative, but it was a lot more scholarly dense than we expected. So at the end, I rated it as 3 stars. Sean gave it a 2-star rating. Well, it was really cool because we're the only 2 people who've reviewed it on Goodreads. So the book now has a 2.5 rating on Goodreads if you're interested in checking it out. But we read it. I read it. It's off my TBR. We're also reading Edward P. Jones' The Known World. I read Edward P. Jones' The Known World. This is the Pulitzer Prize winner from the early 2000s. Is it 2003 or 2004? 2004 Pulitzer Prize winner. Did a buddy read of this one with Sean and Doris and Alba and Justin and Sonia. Was anyone else in that buddy read group? There were a couple other people who should have been participating, but they weren't. Oh, and Doris from Aldi Books. This was such a fantastic buddy read experience, but even more than that, The book was fantastic. I'm going to be doing a single book review about this one pretty soon. Sean has also done a single book review of this one. This one was a 5-star read. Hands down, one of the best books I've ever read about the history of African Americans, but it also was just so interesting in the representation of what it meant to live during that time and the plight of blacks, whether they were slaves, former slaves, freed slaves, slave owners. This was wonderful. More on this later. We're also reading together Zora Neale Hurston's debut novel, I think it was, Jonah's Vinegourd, and that one I'm reading an electronic version. I keep calling it Jonah's Vinegourd in that video. The title is actually Jonah's Gourd Vine. It's Zora Neale Hurston's debut novel, and I got an electronic copy from the library. I read this in the buddy read with Sean and Doris and Justin, and who else was in this buddy read? I don't remember, but it was awesome. We loved it, and I read it. I'm also participating in a read-along hosted by Didi. She's a creator over at Brown Girl Reading. In February, she also hosts a read-along. And so this year, the title of the book is Unforgivable Love by Sophronia Scott. I don't have a physical copy of the book. In fact, I don't have the book yet. I requested it from the library, and I should be receiving it next week. I did not read Unforgivable Love by Sophronia Scott. I reserved it from the library, and it never came in. Throughout the entire month of February, it keeps saying I'm next in queue to get this book. It just never came. If you don't already follow Didi's channel, I'll put a link to her channel down below so you can go check her out. Brown Girl Reading is her name. Didi, she lives in Paris. She's awesome. Another buddy read I'm going to be doing is with Krista from Books and Jams, and we were going to be reading together Girl at War by Sarah Novik, I think the name is pronounced. I've since learned that the name is pronounced Sarah Novich, and I did a buddy read of this one with Krista from Books and Jams, and this was fascinating. I learned a lot about the war between Croatia and Bosnia, things that I didn't know and didn't know that I didn't know. Another reading group that I've been wanting to join is Britta Bowler's Noble Women Read Along every month, I think since November. She's chosen a different female winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature and presented a book before the author won the prize. And this month it's Pearl Buck. The choice is The Good Earth. Started this one in February. I didn't finish. I've since finished it, but I didn't finish in February, but I read it. So is that a win? Yes. I'm gonna say this is a win. I started in February along with a read along. I wouldn't have read it now if it wasn't for Britta. So I'm gonna say I participated in the read along. Thanks, Britta, for getting me and other people to read more of these Nobel Prize winning books. Well, Nobel Prize winning authors. And yeah, I'm gonna mark that one as read. Speaking of read-alongs and book clubs, you know I also host my own book club here on my Runwright Reads booktube channel, and it's called the Runwright Reads Book Club. And in February, we have 2 books. Sindewa Magona, Mother to Mother, we read this one for the Runwright Reads Book Club in February. There's a link to my full review in the description box down below. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on this book, go ahead and watch that video. And the other book was The Conservationist by Nadine Gordimer, also read. That video is not yet live because, well, schedules and times. But I read this one and a review is coming in the next day or so. Videos take a little while here on this channel. I'm not a full-time booktuber. If you'd like to make me a full-time booktuber, if you think that you would like to see more videos from me, more timely videos, then click the links down below. Check out my affiliate links, buy something using my affiliate code, or give me a tip on Patreon, or send me a gift. You can make this happen. The power is in your hands. In January and didn't, and so I'm carrying them over to February, and so I have a lot of Man Booker reading to do. Lots of Man Booker books got read in February. Yup. That is Troubles by J.G. Farrell. Read. I have In a Free State by V.S. Naipaul. Read. New for the February schedule. I have 3 more books plus The Conservationist by Nadine Gordimer that is a part of the book club. I only have 2 of those read. Here. I have G by John Berger. I read. Have Siege of Krishnanpur. Also read. Farrell as well, same author. I'm definitely behind on posting reviews and discussion videos of my Man Booker reading, but a comparison of these 2 books is coming pretty soon. Stay tuned to the channel for more. Yeah, you could make the videos come faster. You know how. Click the links down below. Support my channel. 1974 winner Holiday by Stanley Middleton that I'd like to get to in February. No surprise if you already watched my March TBR video, because you'll know I did not read Holiday in February because it's on my March TBR. I read a lot of Man Booker books in February. I couldn't add another one that didn't need to be there, so I'm a little bit behind in my man booker reading, but that's okay. Your own on my shelves. Some of them are books that I requested from the library. Some of them are books that I've had on my TBR shelves for a while, and they were written by African Americans or feature something about Black history, and I want to read them. So these are they. First is Ta-Nehisi Coates, We Were 8 Years in Power. I read this one. It's An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I didn't get to An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. In fact, it was due back at the library before I had a chance to read it, so I had to return it. I don't have it anymore, but I'm gonna put it back on my TBR because I really want to read it. It won the National Book Award, and I'm sorry that I haven't read it yet. Then there is a book that has been highly recommended, and it's a short one, so I know that I should be able to read it very soon. This is Aidi by Roxane Gay. I read this one. I absolutely loved it. There was a lot in this book that I can't tell you about. Well, I did tell you about it in my review video, but if you haven't read it yet, I recommend that you pick this one up. Wonderful. Then there is She Would Be King by Wayuta Moore. This one is an arc that I got from Beautiful. I read this one, and it's a book that I want to own now just because Jamaica is represented in this book, and I didn't know that when I picked it up. I thought it was more about Africans in Africa, but I like the Jamaican representation in here, which is not something that happens very often. More on this coming soon. And then the last book is one that I started reading last year and only got to about page 50 and stopped for one reason or another. I was doing a buddy read of this one with my husband. He wasn't even my husband at the time. We were just dating and reading together Hellhound on His Trail by Hampton Sides. He thumbed through it in I think 2 afternoons. I plan to read this. I had all intentions of reading it, but you'll see that the bookmark is still in here because I didn't get anywhere in this book. There were just too many books to read, and I will. I read some other things that featured civil rights activists that made me want to go back and read a little bit more about what was happening in the 1960s around the time when MLK was assassinated. So I will revisit this at some point, but it wasn't in February. And get so immersed in it, I'll finish it in a day, and I want to see if it's true. A day. So one day I'm gonna sit around and just read this book. I'm gonna do it. Clearly, that was not a day in February 2019. I started but didn't finish. I want to finish reading the autobiography of Malcolm X as told. Nope, didn't get to this one either. Again, 2 books that are set in the 1960s that I want to read. 2 important Black history figures that I want to revisit their stories. I read, I skimmed through a lot of this in January when I was working with my student. I feel like I know the story. I mean, we know how the story ends. I read how the story began. I read a lot about the middle. But I do want to go through and read the whole book from cover to cover. And I thought that that would happen in February, but it didn't. Adding that and calling that book number 31 in my February TBR. Lots of books that feature African American authors. Lots of books that feature Black history figures. I want to read these books. I want to read them soon. I'd love to hear from you. So of the 31 books that I started with on my February TBR, I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 2 electronic versions, Jonas Gordvine and Mother to Mother. So I read 15 books from my original 31 book strong TBR, and I think that that's great. Wow, I didn't realize it was so many. So I accomplished about almost 50% of my TBR plans, so we're gonna call that a win. I don't know what kind of test 50% or just under 50% becomes a pass mark, but we're gonna say that my February TBR was a win because I read a lot. I read a lot of the things that I had planned, but I also made room in my TBR for books that spoke to me, books that appealed to me for one reason or another. And I had a great time reading. So that's my February TBR revisit. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more, then definitely go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you liked it. Comment down below. So we'll talk down there. Let me know how successful you were with your TBR plans. If you read a lot of the books that you plan to read, or if you were otherwise inspired during the month and just went rogue. So let's talk down there. And until next time, happy reading. Bye.